Pittsburgh special presentation.
Hi, I'm John Delano, political editor at KDK TV, and our special guest is Sam DeMarco, Allegheny County Council member, a member of the County Elections Board, and chair of the Allegheny County Republican Party. Sam, you wear a lot of hats, and it's good to have you with me today. Thank you, sir.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me.
So let me ask you first about this letter that the General Counsel of the United States Postal Service sent to Pennsylvania Secretary of State Kathy Boockvar, warning that state law that allows for application for mail-in ballots on October 27th conflicts with the post office's recommendation that that's the last day to mail in a ballot to make sure that the post office delivers it. Do you have any concerns about what's going on here?
I do, John. And I think, when we talk about the mail-in ballots, I think this whole thing brings into question the wisdom of having gone to mail, relying on the post office when they're clearly working with a broken business model. I mean, the Postmaster General just reported that the decline in mail volume, as well as an inadequate business strategy and any ideas on how to address that strategy, is leading to the problems that they have today. And I think we have a situation here in Pennsylvania where, again, we have the ability to apply for a mail-in ballot up to a week before the election, but the post office can't guarantee delivery of it if you took and mailed it that day. So this is a significant problem. It's something that I hope the state legislature addresses quickly here before the end of the month.
Do you think the solution is what the Secretary of State has done, which is go to court and basically say, give us 3 more extra days to count ballots after the election is over?
Absolutely not. This isn't Hanukkah, okay? This is election day. They call it election day for a reason, all right? And what I think should happen is the deadline to apply for a ballot or have it mailed should be moved back, I should say, so that the application gets pushed back a week. So you have 2 weeks before the election, which should give adequate time to be able to get your ballot and to return it. I mean, at the end of the day, I think one of the great things about this nation, it separates us from everyone else, has been the peaceful transition of power that takes place between administrations. In order for that to occur, everybody needs to believe that our elections are fair and that the process is secure. So anything that casts doubt on that is going to be a problem for either side. So I think, when we look at this, I think that the whole idea of going to mail is a bad idea in the first place, because clearly, again, with the advent of new technology, the move to email and things like that, I don't know that the post office has a survivable strategy long term. So for our model to rely on the post office to be able to deliver our votes, I think it's a problem.
But of course, Sam, we are in the middle of a pandemic, and there are a lot of folks, particularly older voters, who do not want to go to a voting place on election day. They want to use the mail. Shouldn't they have that option?
Absolutely, John. But, they have the ability to apply for a ballot today. It's in August. And on September 14th, ballots will be then sent out to them from the Division of Elections. I mean, so they have 50 days before the election in which to vote by mail if they want to vote. At some point here, the voter needs to take responsibility. And if they want to exercise their civic responsibility, they can do it. But to sit here and say, well, 50 days isn't enough, we need 53 or 54 or 55, that's ludicrous in my opinion.
So the bottom line, what you're recommending is really that people vote early. Just vote sooner rather than later, and then there's no problem.
Absolutely. I am not a proponent of mail-in voting per se as a system, but it's what we have here in Pennsylvania this year. And there are adequate safeguards in place per the law today in which ballots are only mailed to people who apply for them. So I'm comfortable with that. So I'm urging our folks who are concerned about their health or concerned about going to the polls to apply and vote early. But that being said, and folks go out to the drugstore, they go out to the supermarket, they go out to the restaurant. There are folks that still go out. And I think that, going to the polls on election day, wearing a mask, exercising social distancing, You know, having hand sanitizer or ensuring that you wash your hands is another great way of being able to exercise your civic responsibility and stay safe at the same time.
As I said earlier, you wear multiple hats, and one of those is as a member of the three-person county elections board. Are you satisfied that the polling places, number one, that we're going to have neighborhood polling places so that you don't have to go all over the place to vote, and number two, that they will be safe and secure on November 3rd for people to go out and vote in person?
I'm satisfied that as of today, the intent is to provide the neighborhood polling places, all 1,323 precincts, just as we had in November of last year. That's the plan. And I pushed for the Division of Elections to do a survey in July of the available workers and to see who's willing to work and who's not. But I've seen conflicting information. I received an email from the director of the Division of Elections telling me that 3,400 people had already agreed to work on election day, but then they put out in Allegheny News alerts that only 2,500 had agreed. That's a delta of 900 here before we start contacting the other folks. But people, my intention, and I will do everything that I can possibly do to ensure that any Allegheny County resident can go to a poll on election day, November 3rd, and vote safely and securely. But I can't control what the governor or the county executive may try to do under pretenses of an emergency.
Let me ask you now, if you would, to put on your Republican Party hat, because as you know, the head of the Republican Party, President Donald Trump, is very skeptical of mail-in balloting and the security. And I get the feeling that he just doesn't want people to vote by mail, period. Although he himself and his members of his family have applied for mail-in balloting. So it's a little unclear to me what he objects to one way or the other. What's your view of mail-in balloting as an option for folks?
I think the president's getting a bad slant here, okay? What the president is against is what they call universal mail-in balloting, where ballots themselves are sent out to every registered voter, okay? He's not against. You'll hear him talk about he's in favor of absentee voting, which is what he and his family use, okay? And because of that, when you vote absentee, you have to apply for the ballot. Well, in Pennsylvania, mail-in ballots and absentee ballots are handled in the same way as far as you have to apply for them and the safeguards checking your identity before a ballot's sent out. But John, let me tell you, in the primary, we sent applications out to every registered voter, and we got back over 50,000 that were undeliverable. Now, this is what the president's complaining about. If we were sending ballots out, there'd be 50,000 ballots out there in the ether. Okay,
well, we don't do that.
Filled out and returned by anybody. Right, we do not do that. But that's why folks that try to take and correlate what the president is saying with what we do here, you know, there's a distinction and there's a difference.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, basically the only person who can get a ballot in Pennsylvania is somebody who applies for it directly.
Yes.
And correct. And as far as you're concerned, that's okay.
Yes.
Gotcha. And then finally, let me ask you, if I may, Sam, about the lawsuit that the state has filed, that the Secretary of State has filed. You touched on it earlier when I asked you about it. I want just to be clear. Your position essentially is that the court should reject this idea of extending the period of time in which a ballot can come in, even though it's postmarked by election day.
Right. Under the law, Act 77, which was passed and signed into law on October 31st of 2019, and Act 12, which was signed into law this past March. Okay. Under those, no ballot can be received after 8 p.m. on election day. That's the way it should be. All right. We're just talking about this. You have 50 days in advance to get your ballot in if you want to vote by mail. Failing to do that, you have the option to vote in person. If you have a ballot that you've gotten and you're afraid it won't get there in mail, you have the option of using a drop box. Here in Allegheny County, we had one at the county office building, and I believe that's the intention to have one there again. So there are multiple options if you want to vote. No one will be disenfranchised or prevented from voting if they just exercise just the slightest bit of responsibility on their own part to take and get their vote in.
Let me ask you, if I may, about those drop boxes, because there has been some controversy about those. You essentially, well, first of all, state law requires you to drop off your own vote, but you're not allowed to drop off someone else's vote. Is that correct?
Correct. What Pennsylvania state law is against ballot harvesting, whereby a third party can go and collect ballots and deliver them on behalf of somebody else. That's what California has. And that's one of the things where we had a problem, because what you don't have an idea, this person going out to collect ballots could also be trying to help you fill out those ballots. Then there's no guarantee that the ballots picked up all make it into the division of elections. All right. So the process that we have, I can live with. Okay. But in Allegheny County, it's different than what's been done elsewhere in the state. When the law was passed, it was unclear as to how the counties should actually execute and administer these elections, leaving things up to interpretation. So in Allegheny County, we will go by the letter of the law. So we had a drop box on the first floor of the county office building, but we had county employees there just to check your ID to make sure it's yours and you're not dropping off a bunch of ballots that who knows where they came from. In other places like Montgomery County, they had 20 mailboxes that were just left out there, unmanned, 24/7. Anybody could have gone and put anything in there. So that's one of the reasons why the president's campaign is taking the state to court, and that's one of their objections.
Right. And I understand what you're saying is that if there's going to be a drop box, you want to have a county employee actually check the ID of the person who's doing the drop. And that's a way to secure, basically to follow state law. Would you object to multiple drop boxes throughout Allegheny County as long as they were properly staffed with a county employee to check ID?
No.
Yeah, because
I would not object. I would not object.
Yeah, because some people have said that it might be helpful to have more than just that one location downtown, albeit I guess parking is provided.
Well, right, exactly. You know, what we do is we take and we cone off, put safety traffic cones in front of the county office building so they don't have to park. They can pull up, employees will wave them in, they can just run in, drop off their ballot, run back out, and they're on their way. So we don't want to take and cost them anything. There's no expense involved with parking or whatever. But again, if they failed to take and turn their ballot back to the post office in time for it to be delivered, and they don't want to go and vote in person, this is a third option that they have available to be able to take and cast their vote.
Well, Sam DeMarco, thank you, sir, very much. Allegheny County Council member, a member of the three-person county election board, and chair of the Allegheny County Republican Party. Thank you, sir, for sharing your thoughts with us today. I really appreciate it.
John, thank you for having me. Have a great day.
Hi, I'm John Delano, political editor at KDK TV, and our special guest is Bethany Hallam, Allegheny County Councilwoman and a member of the Allegheny County Elections Board. Bethany, thank you so much for being with us. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, John.
A lot of talk these days about President Trump, the mail-in ballots, lawsuits, and the like. So let me just sort of dive right in. How important are mail-in ballots, and are you concerned about the post office and mail-in ballots?
Oh, of course. I can't help but be concerned because we have spent the entire year pushing mail-in ballots, especially in the midst of a pandemic, telling everyone it's the only safe way to vote. And now here we are, the Postal Service is being destroyed right before our eyes. And so, of course, my biggest concern is how will people be able to vote by mail if there is no funding and no support for the Postal Service coming from the federal level?
You know, the Post Office General Counsel has sent a letter to the state basically saying, you know, your last day for requesting mail-in ballots is actually the last day that we recommend that you send an actual ballot into the county elections department.
Right.
In other words, they want 7 days to get a ballot from your house to the Elections Bureau. What's your comment or thought about that?
I have a lot of comments on that because one of the things that I think is so important is that people realize that there is no one party who is trying to steal this election. That's something that I've heard a lot, both on social media and in the news, is that I've heard that this is one targeted action by one targeted party. But the problem is both parties vote by mail, and both parties need to participate in this election. And so I'm just concerned that if people feel like they can't trust the mail-in ballot process, we're going to have people of both parties who are feeling the need to risk their health and well-being in the middle of a pandemic to show up and vote in person at the polls. And especially given the shortage of poll workers that we have in Allegheny County right now, I'm really worried about the potential of polling place consolidation as well.
Yeah, nobody wants polling place consolidation because when you take away the neighborhood polls, you actually make it very difficult for people to vote. So I hope that's the last thing you guys are going to do. But,
I would never vote for polling place consolidation. I promise you that.
So let me ask you, though, about the mail-in and the post office. Doesn't the post office have a point? You really shouldn't wait to the very last minute to cast a vote, should you?
Absolutely not. I mean, luckily the ballot application window has already been open for quite some time now. I've been advocating for everyone to go online and apply for their mail-in ballot now, because we don't want to overwhelm our elections divisions workers. You know, my dad worked for the Postal Service for almost 40 years, so that I'm always thinking of our postal workers, our election division workers, and making sure that we do our part as voters, as members of the community, to make sure that we make their job as easy as possible. So don't wait till the last minute. Get that mail-in ballot application in now, and then as soon as the ballot is finalized, the county elections division will send all those ballots out and you can have your time to submit your vote.
Finally, Bethany, let me ask you about the Secretary of State's lawsuit that essentially would say that the state would have, or the county elections departments would have 3 additional days to count ballots, to receive and count ballots. Right now, the deadline is 8 p.m. on Election Day. What do you think of allowing more time for these ballots to be received and counted?
I think it's a great idea. Again, as long as the ballot is postmarked by Election Day, that means that the voter submitted their vote in proper time before the 8 p.m. deadline on Election Day. My one concern with what we did in the primary is that a few counties around the Commonwealth were authorized to accept ballots after Election Day, but not all of them. So my biggest concern is that whatever it is that we choose to do, we do it uniformly across the entire Commonwealth.
Well, that makes good sense as well. So thank you, Bethany Hallam. Appreciate very much your time today. Thanks for talking with me.
Thank you, John. Have a good one.
Just because the weekend starts doesn't mean our commitment to excellence stops. Wake up to KDKA TV News Saturday and Sunday morning for overnight and